Superfan Gamer Text-to-Speech Audio Statement of Clarity and Discernment. By B.J. Mayfield, the NTP Gamer. As I begin this audible journey through the fictional world of Resident Evil, my favorite genre of survival, puzzle horror video games, I commit myself to truth over assumption, clarity over confusion, and understanding over nostalgia alone. I approach this not just as a player, but as a witness to the story, retracing every step, every outbreak, every experiment, and every consequence that brought this world to where it is now. Series Introduction, beginning at the end to find the beginning. I thought I was starting at the end. I kept hearing the word, Requiem, like everything was coming to a close. Like the story that shaped my childhood gamer mindset was finally reaching its final breath. I heard names that I recognized, names that stayed with me since the beginning, like Leon Scott Kennedy, and even whispers of monsters that should have been long gone, like Mr. X. But something did not sit right with me. Because if this truly is the end, then I need to understand how it all began. So instead of rushing forward into something uncertain, I made a decision. I would walk this story backwards, step by step, until the truth reveals itself. Full story, what I thought was the end, was only a shadow. I remember sitting there, thinking about what Requiem could mean. A final chapter. A closing chapter. A farewell to everything that defined the world of Resident Evil. If that is true, then someone like Leon would have to return. That makes sense to me. He survived the nightmare of Resident Evil 2, walked through chaos, fire, and infection, and came out the other side changed, no longer just a rookie, but a man shaped by the horrors he witnessed. But then my mind went somewhere deeper. Mr. X. I remember him clearly, that sound that came from the way he walked, the way he never stopped, the way fear followed every footstep. And I remember something else too, I remember his end. I remember that he was destroyed. So how could something like that return? Asking myself that question is what made everything shift for me. Because as soon as I asked myself, I realized some basic knowledge of the Resident Evil world, but so important to clarify for me personally. I realized the truth. Mr. X was never just one thing. He was a product. A creation. A weapon. Then I remembered something important to my research. The Tyrant program was never about a single monster, it was about replication, control, and perfection. What I, and other players faced in Resident Evil 2 was only one unit, one version of something much bigger. And that realization changed everything. Because it means the horror of that particular tyrant never truly ended. It only evolved. So if this so-called Requiem exists, if it truly is the next chapter after Resident Evil Village, then I believe that it is not about the return of the same monsters, it is about the continuation of what created them in the first place. And that leads me to something even more important. This story was never just about survival. It was about origin. About a corporation that believed it could control life itself. About experiments that went too far. About a virus that was never meant to stay contained. I realize now that I cannot understand the end until I face the beginning. Not the chaos of Raccoon City. Not even Leon's first day. I have to go further back. Before the outbreak spread. Before the city fell. Before the world even knew what was coming. I have to go to the place where it all truly started. As I continue this journey through the world of Resident Evil, I remain committed to tracing the truth from its root. I understand now that every outbreak, every creature, and every tragedy was not random, it was the result of deliberate choices, hidden experiments, and a pursuit of power that ignored all consequence. Greed. I move forward with clarity, recognizing that what I am about to uncover is not just the beginning of a story, but the foundation of everything that followed. Series continuation, Before the Mansion, Before the Fear. I remember thinking the nightmare began in the mansion. That was the story I always held onto, the isolated horror, the locked doors, the creeping silence, and yes, those zombie dogs. Sheesh. But as I looked deeper, I realized something unsettling. The mansion was not the beginning. It was a cover. A mask hiding something far worse beneath it. To truly understand what happened, I have to go back further, to a moment before the chaos, when everything still seemed under control. Or at least, that is what they wanted everyone to believe. Full story, the train, the rain, and the first crack in the world. It started with a train. The Ecliptic Express. I can see it clearly in my mind, cutting through the darkness, surrounded by forest, carrying passengers who had no idea what they were about to become a part of. There was no warning, no announcement, no chance to prepare. Only silence. And then, infection. That is where I first begin to understand the truth. This was not an accident. This was the result of something that had already begun long before anyone stepped onto that train. As I continue forward, I recognize that I am no longer searching blindly. What once felt like isolated horror now reveals itself as a connected design. Every step I take through the fictional world of Resident Evil is no longer just about survival. It is about understanding how truth was hidden beneath layers of fear, control, and deception. I move with clarity now, knowing that what I am about to witness is not the beginning, but the moment the world first sees what had already begun. Continuation, the mansion where it became real. I remember this place. Oh boy, do I remember. This is where everything became real to me. The Spencer Mansion. Before this, everything I've seen felt like fragments, like pieces of something hidden beneath the surface. But here, in this place, there is no more hiding. The horror is no longer contained. It is revealed. Full story, the night that changed everything. It begins with a mission. Strange murders on the outskirts of Raccoon City. Reports of cannibalistic attacks. The kind of cases that do not make sense, the kind that people try to explain away. That is when the STARS unit is sent in. And this is where I step into the story through Jill Valentine and Chris Redfield, members of an elite unit trained to handle the unknown, yet nothing could have prepared them for what they were about to face. The forest was only the beginning. Because what drove them into the mansion was fear. I can still see it clearly. The team is separated. The doors close behind them. And suddenly, escape is no longer simple. This was not a rescue mission. It felt like a trap. The mansion, a beautiful lie covering a nightmare. At first glance, the mansion felt almost peaceful. Quiet hallways, elegant design, a place that should feel safe. But something is wrong. The silence is heavy. The air feels watched. And then I see it. The first body that does not stay dead. The first moment where reality breaks. This is where the truth can no longer be denied. Umbrella revealed. What I began to understand on the train now becomes undeniable here. The Umbrella Corporation is no longer just a shadow in the background. It is the architect of everything in front of me. The mansion is not a home. It is a cover for an underground laboratory. A place where experiments were conducted in secret, hidden from the world, hidden even from those sent to investigate. And beneath it all lies the virus that changed everything. The T-virus. Betrayal from within. But the horror is not just outside. It is inside the team. This is where I realize something even deeper. The enemy is not only the creatures. It is deception. Because within the STARS unit, there is betrayal. Albert Wesker. A leader. A guide. Someone who was supposed to protect the team. But in truth, he was working for Umbrella. Using the mission. Using the people. Observing the chaos like an experiment. Survival changes everything. As I move through this nightmare, something shifts. This is no longer about understanding. This is about surviving. Every hallway becomes a risk. Every door becomes a question. Every sound becomes a warning. And I realize something that stays with me even beyond this moment. This is where survival horror is truly born. Not just fear of what I see, but fear of what I do not see, yet. The pattern becomes clear. Now I see it fully. The train showed us the outbreak. The facility showed us the experiments. The mansion shows us the consequences. And it all connects. This is why the city falls. This is why people like Leon Scott Kennedy walk into a nightmare later. This is why monsters like Mr. X are even possible. Because what happened here was never meant to stay here. Where I stand now, I thought this was the beginning. But now I know better. This was the moment that the truth could no longer be contained. The moment that the nightmare stepped into the light. And I am starting to understand something that changes everything. The mansion was only the first outbreak the world noticed. And for this fictional survival horror game universe, it definitely wasn't the last. As I move from the mansion to the city, I see the consequences of what Umbrella has unleashed. The experiments are no longer confined to hidden halls or secret trains. They have spread into the streets, alleys, and homes. This is where the world first feels the scope of the horror, and where survival is no longer theoretical, it is urgent, personal, and unavoidable. I approach this next part with the same clarity and discernment, remembering that this is a fictional world, and every creature, every event, and every choice traces back to the ambition and pride of Umbrella. Let us continue. The city where survival became real. I remember arriving in Raccoon City, a place that had once been bustling, familiar, alive. Now, it is something else entirely. Smoke curls above buildings. Sirens scream in the distance. Streets are littered with abandoned cars and scattered belongings. Silence is punctuated by distant groans. This is the world of Resident Evil 2. This is the scale of the outbreak. And this is where I step into the shoes of Leon Scott Kennedy, a young officer, newly assigned, naive to the depth of the nightmare he is about to face. And later, Claire Redfield, Chris Redfield's younger sister. Full story, walking into the nightmare. I still see it, the city that everyone thought was safe, crumbling under the weight of its own secrets. After getting separated from Claire Redfield, Leon arrives at the station. It should be a place of order, a place of help. Instead, it is a trap. Corpses of citizens. Walls smeared with evidence of violence. And a single truth that cannot be ignored: the virus has escaped. I watch as he moves cautiously, every step a calculation. Every sound demands attention. Shadows are no longer just darkness, they are danger. And around every corner, the unknown awaits. That's when Leon meets Lieutenant Marvin Branagh. The encounters that defined survival. Leon sees it all. The infected wandering the streets, once human, now unrecognizable. The panic that turns neighbor against neighbor. The first glimpses of the creatures born from Umbrella's ambition. And then, something larger approaches. Something unstoppable. The tyrant. Mr. X, or one of his kind, moves through the city with relentless purpose. It does not tire. It does not hesitate. And I understand, with cold clarity, that this is not the same unit destroyed in the mansion. This is a continuation of Umbrella's design, a symbol of their obsession with control and dominance. The city teaches the rules. Raccoon City is a classroom for survival. Every decision matters. Every hesitation can be fatal. Leon learns quickly that fear is a tool, but strategy is survival. I begin to see the pattern that links the mansion to the city. Leon then is introduced to Ada Wong, and she is something else. And that's where the secrets once hidden begin to explode into public chaos. Experiments that were supposed to be contained spread uncontrollably. The ambition of a corporation becomes the terror of a city. The outbreak is no longer hypothetical. It is alive, active, and everywhere. But no worries, gamers, this is still a fictional world. Betrayal, conspiracy, and clues to the past. But the city also reveals something deeper. Umbrella's hand is everywhere. Evidence, files, recordings, and desperate notes point to what I already expected: the corporation's reach is vast. The virus was never an accident. It was designed, tested, and released. And I realize something very quickly and crucial: survival here is not just about avoiding death. It is about understanding the forces behind the horror, tracing them back to their origin. Only by seeing the cause can I comprehend the effect. Where I stand now. I truly thought that the mansion was the center of the nightmare. And I thought that the train was the beginning. But now, the city, Raccoon City, is showing me their truth, Umbrella's truth. And here is what I, B.J. Mayfield, believe, so don't quote this as the truth, unless it is. The outbreak is a living, spreading force, tied directly to Umbrella's ambition and the experiments that they cannot control. Leon's journey in Raccoon City is not just a fight for survival. It is a lesson in understanding. And I know the next step is coming. The bridge between the past and the future, the moment when the virus spreads beyond one city and begins to touch this fictional, yet realistic feeling, well-developed world itself. As I prepare to leave Raccoon City behind, I see the true weight of what happens when ambition runs unchecked. The horror is no longer contained to a single place. It spreads. It evolves. What began in secret experiments now touches the world, and the people who survive carry both the burden and the knowledge of what has been unleashed. I continue to move forward with clarity and discernment, knowing that each encounter, each loss, and each revelation, yet fictional, ties back to the origins of the virus and the choices made by those who sought to control life itself. Let's continue with my personal experience with this franchise. Let's go beyond Raccoon City. I remember leaving the ruins of Raccoon City with Claire Redfield, young sister of the OG character Chris Redfield, and Sherry Birkin, daughter of Umbrella scientists William and Annette Birkin. Each of us held one of Sherry's hands as we walked up the highway, the smoke still curling above buildings, the silence still heavy with the echoes of chaos as we looked towards the future. But the nightmare was not over. It had only grown larger. Jill Valentine, still alive, still determined, is running, not just for herself, but for the people who cannot defend themselves. The Nemesis program, another weapon of Umbrella's obsession, stalks her relentlessly. I see it clearly. This is not a creature born of chance. It is a tool of control, designed to hunt, to terrorize, to enforce Umbrella's will. And Leon Scott Kennedy is still fighting his way through streets, alleys, and corridors, learning the harsh truth. Survival is never just about escaping the infected. It is about understanding the hand that created them. Full story, Nemesis and the global threat. I follow Jill through the chaos. The city is no longer just a battleground, it is a trap engineered to demonstrate the corporation's power. Every encounter with the Nemesis is a reminder that Umbrella does not merely create monsters, they create consequences. I begin to see the pattern. The mansion was the origin of exposure. Raccoon City was the first uncontrolled outbreak. The Nemesis is the next stage, testing survival, obedience, and fear. Umbrella's reach is global. The virus is no longer a secret. And the tools they built to control their creations now enforce terror on those who stumble into it. Lessons in survival and observation. The world beyond Raccoon City teaches me something I could not see before. The virus adapts, the creatures evolve, and the mistakes of one city echo across continents. Leon, Jill, and even the forces of Umbrella who seek control are all players in a story much larger than themselves. Every monster, every shadow, every abandoned street is a lesson in understanding the pattern Umbrella has left behind. And I see clearly that the horror is a reflection of ambition unbound. The path to the future. By the time Jill faces the Nemesis, I understand something fundamental. The personal struggle is inseparable from the global narrative. The virus will not remain confined. The consequences of ambition and the thirst for control are unstoppable without intervention. I see now why Leon survives. I see why Jill fights on. Their journeys are not just about escaping danger. They are about confronting the results of hubris and the corruption of unchecked power. And I know that the story, if it continues, will always return to this truth. Every horror, every outbreak, every shadow in the dark originates from the same source, the choices of those who believed they could play God. Where I stand now. I thought survival meant escaping the infected. But now I know survival also means seeing clearly, understanding the origin, and preparing for the consequences yet to come. The world is bigger than Raccoon City. The virus is bigger than a single outbreak. And the story is far from over. As I continue in Raccoon City, I remind myself that survival is only one part of understanding this world. The chaos, the monsters, the relentless pursuit of Jill by Nemesis, and the horrors Leon faces are all pieces of a larger design orchestrated by Umbrella. Every street, every building, every shadow carries a lesson about consequence, ambition, and human endurance. I proceed with clarity and discernment in this fictional yet realistic to me feeling survival universe, observing not just what is happening, but why it happens, and how these events connect to what has come before, even if the full global story is not yet visible. Now, let's discuss the streets of Raccoon City. I remember running through the streets with Jill. Smoke and fire curl through the empty avenues. Sirens wail in the distance. The infected stagger through what remains of the city, aimless yet deadly. The nemesis moves silently but purposefully, a perfect predator designed to hunt her. I watch as she navigates narrow alleys, abandoned stores, and collapsing buildings. Every step is calculated. Every encounter is a fight not just for survival, but for understanding. Meanwhile, Leon is carving his own path through chaos. Rookie cop turned reluctant hero, he faces hordes of infected while piecing together clues about what Umbrella has done to the city. Every corner, every building tells a story, and every note, file, and corpse adds to the picture. Full story, Nemesis and Jill's fight. Jill knows that running is not enough. She must outthink, outmaneuver, and confront Nemesis, even as it evolves. This is not just a monster, it is a symbol of Umbrella's control and ambition. Each encounter reinforces the truth: this horror was engineered. It is not natural. I see the pattern now. Mansion. The virus's first exposure and experiments revealed. Train and facilities. The foundation of Umbrella's bioweapon program. Raccoon City. The first uncontrolled urban outbreak. Nemesis. The enforcement of Umbrella's power through terror. Each step builds on the last, and every action taken by Jill, Leon, and the survivors is a response to a chain of events that began long before them. The city teaches the rules. Survival is no longer about hiding. It is about anticipating, planning, and understanding the forces that created the horror. Jill's encounters with Nemesis show me that Umbrella does not merely create threats, they anticipate responses and push survivors to their limits. Now I pause and ask myself, why does this feel so familiar? Unpause. Leon, moving independently, pieces together the origins of the outbreak while confronting the reality of Raccoon City's collapse. Each decision he makes, each person he saves or loses, reflects the same lesson: the virus's spread is inevitable unless its origin is understood. Betrayal and Umbrella's reach. But the city also exposes another layer: betrayal. Not just by monsters, but by people. The betrayer Nikolai, who I believe was connected to Albert Wesker, but don't quote me, that is not confirmed, unless you know something that I don't. Star's files, Umbrella's hidden communications, and desperate journals reveal the full scope of deception. I understand now that the outbreak is not an accident. It is the result of human ambition unrestrained by morality. Nemesis is only the beginning. The survivors' choices, the investigations, and the consequences they face are part of Umbrella's experiment, and their struggle is the first stage in a chain of events that will echo far beyond this city. Where I stand now. I thought Raccoon City was the full measure of horror. But I see now that it is only the first proof of what happens when ambition exceeds ethics. Jill and Leon are survivors, yes, but they are also witnesses. Witnesses to the origins, witnesses to the consequences, and witnesses to the lessons that will shape everything that comes after. This story is far from over. The virus does not sleep. Umbrella's reach does not end here. And I know that the next chapter is coming, where survival, truth, and consequence collide in ways that will force the world of the Umbrella Corporation itself, and gamers of this franchise, to reckon with what has been unleashed. As I step beyond Raccoon City, I now understand that the city's collapse was not an isolated event. The virus, born in secret experiments and unleashed in the shadows, is now a force moving beyond control. Survival is no longer local, it is regional, global, and inevitable. I proceed with clarity and discernment, knowing that this is still a fictional world, and every choice, every action, and every encounter is part of a fictional chain that began long before any of the survivors entered the city, and that will continue to shape this world. The aftermath of Raccoon City. I remember leaving the ruins behind. Smoke still curling into the sky. Bodies line streets that were once filled with life. There is a silence heavier than any sound, but I know it is only temporary. The virus has spread. Not in every street, not yet, but far enough that containment is impossible. Leon, scarred but determined, understands this as he leaves the city. His fight is no longer just about Raccoon City, it is about stopping the same horror from happening elsewhere. Jill, likewise, emerges from the shadows, carrying knowledge, scars, and a determination born from facing Nemesis itself. She knows that what Umbrella has unleashed is not finished. It cannot be. Full story, the spread beyond the city. The aftermath shows the first hints of global consequence. Raccoon City's destruction makes international headlines, but the truth is incomplete. Files recovered from Umbrella offices hint at experiments far larger than a single city. Surviving tyrants and bioweapons are unaccounted for, scattered, and active. I see it clearly now. The virus does not respect borders, and Umbrella's ambition does not respect morality. Leon's, Jill's, and Claire's experiences become a warning, a lesson, and a first line of defense against a growing shadow. Here, I quote Jill Valentine, "So long RC." Lessons learned. From this point forward, survival is intertwined with understanding. Knowledge of Umbrella's experiments becomes as important as evading monsters. Each outbreak is a step in a larger plan, whether intentional or a consequence of hubris. The hero's scars, both physical and emotional, are the evidence of what happens when ambition exceeds conscience. The city was only the first large-scale proof. The world beyond will demand more than courage, it will demand insight. Preparing for the next chapter. Now, I stand at the edge of a new horizon. Leon moves toward broader threats, bioterrorism on a larger scale. Jill prepares for the next encounters, aware that Nemesis was not the only weapon. The virus and Umbrella's influence are no longer contained, the pattern is set. And somewhere, in the shadows, the legacy of tyrants, Nemesis, and Umbrella's experiments begin to converge, quietly preparing for the events that I believe will bring this survival horror puzzle game to a breaking point. Resident Evil 9 Requiem. As I move beyond the ruins of Raccoon City, I realize that the stakes have changed. What was once local, hidden, and contained is now global and unavoidable. The virus, Umbrella's ambition, and the bio-organic weapons they've created are no longer confined, they are spreading. Survival is not just personal anymore. It is about preventing catastrophe on a scale that most cannot even imagine. I proceed with clarity and discernment, remembering that although fictional, every encounter, every revelation, and every survivor's choice is a reflection of human ambition unchecked, and that understanding this is as important as surviving it. The rise of global threats. I remember the first reports. Cities far beyond Raccoon were experiencing outbreaks. Unexplained incidents. Dead appearing in hospitals. Law enforcement overrun. Panic spreading faster than infection. Leon Scott Kennedy, now experienced and hardened, is called in as a U.S. government agent. He sees the pattern clearly. Umbrella's experiments are no longer isolated. They are part of a deliberate expansion of bioorganic weapons. Jill Valentine, recovering and regrouping, understands something equally vital. The fight is no longer just about survival. It is about stopping the spread, finding the origin, and exposing the truth to the world. Full story, encounters beyond Raccoon. Leon moves through new environments. Rural towns, now infected with bioorganic threats. Remote villages controlled by cult-like groups spreading parasites, a new variation of the virus. Facilities abandoned but still hiding dangerous research. I see that the creatures are evolving. They are faster, smarter, and more relentless than anything from Raccoon City. The virus has adapted, just as Umbrella intended. Meanwhile, Jill uncovers documents and recordings, evidence of experiments that go far beyond what she experienced in the city. Tyrants, Nemesis units, and other BOWs, bioorganic weapons, have been deployed strategically, creating terror, testing humanity's response, and ensuring Umbrella's control remains invisible to the world. The lessons of survival on a global scale. The world is teaching a harsh truth. Viruses spread faster than containment efforts. Bioorganic weapons are tools of power, not mistakes. Those who survive witness not just horror, but the consequences of ambition and deception. Leon and Jill are no longer just survivors, they are observers, recorders, and fighters for humanity's chance to resist. Each encounter with the infected, each lab infiltrated, is a step toward understanding Umbrella's overarching design. The pattern becomes clear. Now I see the trajectory. Mansion. Virus creation and first public exposure. Raccoon City. First urban-scale outbreak and Nemesis enforcement. Post City. Spread beyond borders, global bioterrorism, and evolution of BOWs. The pieces are forming a larger puzzle. What was once a series of isolated incidents is now a global campaign of terror, guided by human ambition and corporate hubris. Where I stand now. I understand the stakes. The virus is global. Umbrella's ambition is vast. Tyrants, Nemesis, and other bioorganic weapons are no longer city-specific. They are part of a larger war against humanity's survival. Leon and Jill's roles are evolving. They are no longer just fighting for themselves. They are the witnesses to history, the recorders of human ambition run wild, and the frontline defenders against a threat that could reach every corner of the globe. And somewhere, quietly, the seeds of the next chapter, what will become Resident Evil 9. Requiem, are taking root, connecting past outbreaks to a future where everything must be confronted. As I stand on the edge of what is coming, I realize that all I have witnessed, from the train, to Spencer Mansion, to Raccoon City, to the global outbreaks, is only preparation. The virus, the creatures, the experiments, and even the survivors themselves are all threads woven into a design that has not yet fully revealed itself. I step forward with clarity and discernment, knowing that the next chapter, Resident Evil 9, Requiem, will not just test survival. I believe that it will test understanding, courage, and the endurance of those who have borne witness to the legacy of Umbrella. The threshold of Requiem. I remember hearing the whispers first. Survivors reporting unusual activity, experiments thought destroyed resurfacing, and familiar names appearing where they should have been gone. Leon Scott Kennedy, seasoned and sharper than ever, is back on the field. His experiences in Raccoon City and beyond have taught him to expect the unexpected, yet even he is taken aback by the scale of what Requiem is presenting. And then there is Jill Valentine, still determined, still unbroken. She moves with the knowledge that Nemesis was only one of Umbrella's tools, and that the legacy of their experiments stretches farther than anyone has seen. Returning faces and relentless threats. The city, or perhaps a facility, comes into view. The air is thick with tension, the silence heavier than any sound. And then I see them. Leon, still the rookie cop who became a veteran, stepping into a nightmare he knows is not entirely new. Jill, navigating corridors and streets with the instincts of someone who has survived the unthinkable. Mr. X tyrants, or what appear to be new variations, looming with unstoppable precision. I realize something crucial. The tyrants here are not necessarily the same units destroyed in the past. Umbrella's designs are many, and their obsession with perfection ensures that no threat is truly gone. B.J. Mayfield believes that Requiem is as much about evolution as it is repetition, about testing survivors against forces they thought they had already faced. The patterns and lessons. Requiem teaches me that survival is never just physical, it is about knowledge, foresight, and strategy. The monsters are evolving, learning from each encounter, reflecting Umbrella's obsession with control. Past events are not erased, they are repeated, magnified, and interwoven to test humanity's endurance. I see Leon and Jill moving through this world with precision, understanding that every step is both a fight for life and a confrontation with history. The legacy of Umbrella and bioorganic weapons. What I witnessed confirms what I had suspected. Umbrella will never truly die. Their experiments are not contained. Tyrants, Nemesis, and other BOWs are enduring symbols of their hubris, constantly returning in new forms. I believe that Requiem is a continuation, a culmination, and a test of all survivors who have borne witness to the virus's legacy. The stakes are global, yet intensely personal. Every corridor, every facility, every creature reflects the consequences of ambition running unchecked, and the choices of those who survived before are echoed in the present. Where I stand now. I know this is the moment where the story threads converge. Leon and Jill's journeys, born in Raccoon City, continue to intersect. The virus and Umbrella's influence remain central, unstoppable unless confronted directly. Requiem is not just another outbreak, it is a reckoning, a test of survival, understanding, and courage against a legacy of horror. And I realize that the narrative of survival horror is no longer linear. It is cyclical, evolving, and relentless, and the lessons I have learned from the train, the mansion to the city to the global outbreaks are all preparation for what Requiem demands.